Hello and welcome to our episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby, coming to you from New York City, where we are at the TradingTech Briefing, brought to you by the A-Team Group. And we have on the show one of our great friends. It's Richard Leader. How are you?
Great to be back. Thanks for having me back.
So we were just talking beforehand. It is a year since you were back in London. Just, I think it was what, June last year, July last year you came out. So you were probably on the show June last year. We were talking a little bit about you moving out to the States, coming back out here. You've moved the family back over. And I would have said that we've probably spoke at the start of this year and had a good catch up. It's a year ago. So life is moving incredibly fast. So lovely to see you out here. Lovely to hear everything going well and you're fully settled back out into US lifestyle. And we'll come on to a little bit about what's going on with FastFin and everything there in the not too distant future. But first, you and the voice of Silk were there as the moderator for the very first marquee panel. An all-star cast up there beforehand. I managed to catch the very start of it before I had to come out here and do the show out here. But I heard it went fantastically well. You were talking about a subject which everyone is talking about at the moment, AI within the space. Tell us a little bit about what went on and what some of the takeaways that you think that people would have walked away from that session with.
Huge thanks, and once again, thanks for having me back on the famous FinTech Focus television. We're of course not in your fantastic studio in the City of London this time. We're in the lobby of a splendid building on Times Square. But really appreciate you having me back. The panel this morning, I was delighted at the contributions of all the panelists. The organisers, the A-Team Group, had brought together a really fantastic group of people. We had representatives there from the South Side. Rachel from Jefferies was there. We had JP Morgan, we had Point72, the hedge fund, we had AWS, we had Dan Schliefer from Interop.io. It was fantastic to see.
All-star cast.
It was an all-star cast, all coming at it from slightly different angles, which was brilliant. So we got through some fantastic topics, and I asked them, and they very graciously agreed during the prep to keep it focused on actual real-life use cases, which they did. I've been at one or two dozen of these panel events before, where it's all kind of soaring, kind of lofty, kind of transformative speak, but the panelists today really got down into the weeds. I'm not going to reveal anything about what anyone in particular said, but there was discussion around the automation of regular front office processes, the automation of a lot of the stuff that a trading desk will have to task a postgraduate member of someone who's on the analyst program or the associate program to do. Whereas nowadays you can put that over to a machine. Like take for example, when there's an earnings call happening. Let's say NVIDIA are having their earnings call. It's after market closes, etc. But the C-suite are doing the call. You've suddenly got a transcript land, and you've suddenly got 100 different bits of content land. Now, back in the olden days, prior to LLMs, you had to get eyes on that. Everyone had to read it and fish things out. Nowadays with LLMs, that whole process can be largely automated. Okay, it's never going to kind of replace the degree of experience that somebody who's been looking at the markets and making directional bets for their entire career is going to be able to do. But you'll at least be able to do it to the level of that kind of graduate, kind of year one, year two, year two analyst. And that's a microcosm of the excitement around this. And it's not a key point from the panel was that it's not going to put people out of jobs in no more way that I used the example earlier, in no more ways than when New York City upgraded from gas street lighting to electric street lighting. It didn't, the gas lighters no longer lit gas lights for a living, but nowadays in the future people have much better jobs. People are social media consultants. People are doing something a lot more fulfilling than lighting the lamps.
It's almost that's been a bigger. It just moves, doesn't it? And I think this is a really important part of it, that everyone sort of talks about the sort of the robots are taking our jobs, vernacular. Realistically, it's just a shift. And even if you look at people there who certain developers will do, or analysts or wherever it may be, where people are worried about being disintermediated, it's just a shift into different areas. And I'm really excited about prompt engineers, for example, and where people can move into there. And I think it's again skating to where the puck is going. People thinking about, like, how can I maneuver my career into something that's interesting? And I think it's really fascinating what you said there, saying, right, we wanted to be focusing on real-time use cases, because we've been, both you and I have been to shows on numerous occasions over the last couple of years where you're absolutely right. People have been hypothesizing about AI and talking about the potential of AI. But it feels like over the last 6 months in particular, we've been seeing this is how it's being used, this is how we're getting advantage, this is how we are increasing productivity and improving efficiency. And that's a big thing. And you can see now that it's actually being trusted and utilized and actually embedded into, you mentioned a real, variety of people on your panel from all sorts of different spaces, and every single person is utilising it and experimenting with it and innovating with it and coming up with new ideas, and it's phenomenally exciting.
You made a number of really fantastic points therein, and I think you're absolutely right. Now that we're talking about it in the context of what it's going to do rather than what it is, that's a massive advancement. It's like we are, it's like back at the turn of the 20th century, engineers would have been, propeller heads would have been talking about the internal combustion engine by what it could do, whereas nowadays we talk about cars in the context of what it does for your lifestyle. Great, I can drive to the Hamptons on the weekend, I can take the kids to the beach, I can go shopping, etc. All of these real world use cases, and I've thought for a while that AI is really going to have arrived when we stop referring to it as such, when we can be at these events in the future and those dreaded two words are not mentioned. And
it feels like a way off.
It does. One of the other several really awesome points you've just made was around people becoming, and one member of the panel, actually, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this, Dan Schliefer of Interop.io, he gave one really insightful point, which was that it elevates the employee, elevates the staff member to being a line manager in charge of their own line of different AI agents. And so it makes kind of everyone a director in that regard. So no longer is somebody just on the end of the line receiving instructions. They are actually issuing the instructions now, which is absolutely fantastic. And that should make every single person in the knowledge economy so excited. Because you've probably stared at as many PowerPoints from the creator end as I have. I don't want to spend my life tweaking the fonts on a PowerPoint. I want to be able to sort of say to Copilot, as I do, hey, create me a slide that kind of gets this point across, and I want the GenAI to then compose that. And I want to be able to say, no, make that font smaller, make this point larger, change the structure. I want to be able to issue instructions to the computer as I would a human colleague and have it do stuff. And that's the power of this.
And that's the piece of working towards that rather than just sort of assuming that's going to naturally happen, isn't it? I think that's the quality of the question, the quality of the work that you're doing with it and thinking about it in a different way. Talk to me about FastFin. How are you guys integrating it into what you guys have been doing?
Well, we've taken a very AI-centric approach to everything that we do, because put simply, we don't need armies of developers anymore. So we're very much putting it at the heart of all of our implementations, both internal that we do in our incubator, where we develop platforms for ourselves, and also external, where we go and do client projects. We say to our clients, look, you are hiring expert-led domain ninjas who can go in and you can feed them a problem, feed us a problem, and whether it's something written down on the back of a napkin or whether it's a fully elaborated PowerPoint, there we go, PowerPoint again, whether it's a fully elaborated blueprint, you can feed it into our funnel at any point of the ideation process, and out will pop a nice execution plan for how that will be implemented. And then we go and implement it. But the difference is that we don't necessarily need to go and mobilize a feature team comprising 2 developers, a tech lead, a scrum master. We can have one person driving the AI. Usually our foundation technology of choice at the moment is Claude 4, which we're using for a bunch of our kind of tasks. We've just recently finished building an ECN using it, which is a really fantastically transformative project to sort of properly deliver from end to end. just using GenAI. Obviously, it's overseen by humans because we're not going to put something out there that has just been crafted by a machine. But it elevates the humans to doing the much more high-value additive tasks of verifying that it works, doing the QA, making sure that it meets the requirements. In just the same way that when I want to print something out from my computer at home, I just tell the laser printer to print it out. I don't have to. I'm not there with Caxton movable type, sort of putting things in there. And
you're not just doing the clap yet, though, either.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of what it's liberating us to do, and I'm certain I'd be interested to know in what ways it's shaping your industry, because I imagine it's liberating you all to focus on much more strategic tasks.
Well, I just think it sort of focuses into doing what it should do, which is allowing the human to perform better. So if you can take out the administrative low-level work and allow people to I've always sort of saying putting them into the scoring zone. So if you're sat there and you want your team there in the red zone as much as you possibly can be, and that's where they're going to do their best work. If you can automate everything else behind that and allow them to be faster, better, strong. I said this, 7 or 8 years ago, I sort of tried to invent a product that I realised I was way out of my depth very quickly on, and let the industry sort of do it themselves in various different sort of buy and build ways as it's happened subsequently. But the ability to have something there where people can be sort of super recruiters in our world, to basically have information that arrives to them to say, make this call at this time. Same way that data should always have been, if you think about data and how data should be used to allow people to make the right move at the right time and such like, I think that's a really interesting space for
I love your analogy there, the scoring zone. I've thought of similar, but I hadn't put it nearly as well. We've at FastFin Labs we've implemented a similar solution. We call it our FX flashcards. Now, what FX flashcards are all about is when an incoming call comes into a trading desk, or when an IB Bloomberg chat message pops up and it's so-and-so counterparty, maybe it's 0.72 to pick one at random. What are the things that I need to know about 0.72? Well, if I'm on the FI desk at a random FI firm called Jeffries, what do I need to know about it? Well, I know that David, my counterpart at this particular asset manager, I know that he's done this amount of volume. I know that there are these things in the calendar. I know that my boss, my boss's boss, the head of capital markets, is meeting with his boss, the chief investment officer, in 2 weeks' time. I've got 3 or 4 bullet points dragged out of various systems, CRM, the actual news, because I'd look foolish if I didn't realise that they'd just announced, some massive great win of some, they were going to be managing Harvard's whole endowment or something like that. Actually, I wouldn't want to be managing Harvard's whole endowment if Bill Ackman is an authority on the topic. But anyway, what it does is it surfaces from all of the galaxy of available information in a near split second. All the stuff that I need to know when that call comes in. So I can see volumes, I can see CRM history, I can see everything that matters. And if there's a key to do on there, like to say, hey, we've had a trade that didn't settle or something, I would know that. Now, no human can see that, and that's that's a very similar context to what you just described.
Absolutely. I think there's a book called To Sell Is Human, one of my favourite books by Dan Pink, and he talks about the sort of move from buyer beware to seller beware, and how buyers these days are so much more informed than they've ever been before. So to be a salesperson these days, you have to be that much better and better equipped. And when you're there and you're thinking, right, how do I add value? How do I extract value? How do I get people buying into what I'm talking about? You have to have that information to allow yourself to stand out from the crowd and to be credible. And I think that's difficult, particularly when you're talking about technology and tech sales and the finance market as a whole. To be the one-armed man in the land of the blind is a huge advantage over a lot of people. I think that's a real interesting evolution on it. Richard, we need to do another one of our longer episodes, so I'm conscious that we've got to start to wrap up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, as you said, it's a year since FastFin, since we last spoke FastFin on the show. I've been keeping an eye on everything. Obviously caught up with you at various different stages. Feels like it's a great story. You've been back in the UK, the US, as we say, for a year. tell us a couple of things that's been exciting. Tell us a couple more that are going to be even more exciting over the rest of this year.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, and I'd love to come on one of your longer form shows. As two Brits, we actually have something to talk about, which isn't the weather, which is a cultural first. FastFin's
That said, that weather out there is something else today, isn't it?
We haven't even mentioned it. It's scorching. We could talk for an hour about that. It's scorching, and on the mobile saunas graciously provided by the New York City subway. It's so pleasant. Couple key milestones for FastFin this year. Number one, we launched our next incubation effort, which is an FX swaps, interdealer FX swaps platform, which is seeks to address an underserved and under-innovated bit of the market that frankly hasn't innovated in 25 years. And we think we've cracked the code as to why. FastFin itself has been pivoted towards being it's pivoted towards doing what we'd been doing for a while, which is to do AI forward implementations. So we manifestly shout from the rooftops that we are not a body shop. In fact, I might put that one up as slide one in our client deck. But we are finding ourselves increasingly inserted into really interesting senior level conversations where people in the capital markets, the industry that we both serve, are increasingly saying, look, we've got this issue, we've got this idea, we've got this opportunity that's burning a hole in the back of our minds. We just need it implemented. And there aren't enough people, business leaders like yourself and myself, who can actually shape this idea. So they give it to us, they get us to knock the edges off of it. It can be something as basic as written on the back of a napkin. Can't say cigarette packet anymore, but back of the napkin. And they'll give it to us, and then we'll send it back and say, look, here's a thoughtful, fully finessed plan for how to introduce this new product or bring this new instrument to market. And here are the barriers to adoption, and here's how we're going to circumvent them. So. And then we have our army of capable implementers, augmented like Ripley off of Aliens, with their suits of armor, ready to go and move stuff around the loading bay really quickly. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the
whistle-stop tour.
Yes. Those are the exciting, well, for me anyway, they're the exciting directions of travel. But I could talk literally all evening about them. So
well, the night is young. We've got stuff to go yet. Rich.
Indeed, and the temperature is 100 degrees. So
exactly. But listen, I love what you guys have done. I always think it's interesting to hear you talking about it all as well. And thanks so much for coming on and rejoining us today. So
really appreciate the invite. Thanks a lot.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.